The Suicide Squad. This is it is a sequel to the 2016 cinematic mess that was directed by David Ayer. This one written and directed by James Gunn. This movie's getting some incredible reviews. I believe a 96% rating right now on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's going to be a huge hit. I think it's going to bring a lot of people back to movie theaters. People are really digging on it, and I enjoyed it. There's a lot of things about this movie I really liked. It is in every way a substantial improvement over the film that preceded it. This is so much better than the David Ayer film from 5 years ago. It looks better. I believe that at one point I described the original Suicide Squad as looking like a garbled mess of diarrhea being poured into a funnel. And yeah, I was being too nice. That movie looks like straight barf. This movie looks good. It's well directed. It has a good energy to it. Really like these performances. All these characters and all these actors, they're really committed. Margot Robbie is so great as Harley Quinn, and I feel bad for her. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard to feel bad for Margot Robbie. She's like one of the biggest movie stars in the world and like the most beautiful woman ever. But at the same time, she loves the character of Harley Quinn so much. And I feel like from the beginning, they kind of did her dirty because the Harley Quinn Joker dynamic, that relationship is one of the most tragic in all of fiction. And the original Suicide Squad should have been the movie that showed off how tragic that relationship was. And they took what is a very layered three-dimensional character and they watered it down to a woman in pigtails and hot pants. Now, I'm not complaining about the imagery, but as a fan of art, I do have to say that I feel like they've kind of done that character dirty from the beginning. Though I did like Birds of Prey quite a bit. In fact, I'll go as far as to say I like Birds of Prey more than I like this. But we're not talking about those movies right now. Talking about this, I like the actors. I like the performances. I think the action looks really solid. I thought it got better as it went along. And the third act, almost moved me, which surprised me because for the longest time I didn't really care that much about these characters. But James Gunn has a way of doing that where he'll hit you with the gross out and he'll hit you with the violence, and then you'll get to the final act. The first Guardians is a prime example of that, where when, spoiler alert for a 7-year-old movie, when Groot sacrifices himself, you're really emotionally involved at the end of that film. He has a way of getting you to care about even the most despicable characters. I really appreciate the fact that DC gave James Gunn carte blanche to make the movie that he wanted here. And while I don't think that David Ayer did himself any favors, it is fair to say that the original Suicide Squad was completely bogged down by studio interference. This movie was not. This is very noticeably a James Gunn film, and good. And I think DC, to their credit, has done an excellent job of that recently with Birds of Prey and with Joker and even the Snyder Cut, which I didn't like. That was very much Zack Snyder's Justice League, and they allowed him to make the film that he wanted to make. And this is a James Gunn film, and I think that's great. I'm all for artistic, directorial expression. There is a level of fun to this movie that I feel like has been lacking from a lot of Hollywood movies over the last several years. Like I said, it has a good energy to it. It has unique, interesting characters and some good action, but I'll be honest with you, and God, this really bothers me, because I wanted to love this. This was the movie this and probably West Side Story are the two movies that I was most looking forward to this year. I don't love this movie. I do like it. I enjoy it. I recommend people go out and see it, but it's on HBO Max. I saw it in theaters. I would recommend watching it on HBO Max. I did not feel like it was a fully immersive, unique, amazing cinematic experience. James Gunn, like I said, is a great director. There's a lot of unique shots in this movie. You could tell he's having a lot of fun. I don't think this movie's very well written. I was stunned at how painfully unfunny I found so many of the jokes in this movie. Now, people are going to jump on me for that, and I understand. What scares you and what makes you laugh more than anything are the most subjective things in cinema. And there are going to be people who are going to eat this up, and this is not, I do not like being the person who comes on here and says, you're stupid because you all like something that I didn't like. That's not me. That's not me. A lot of people are going to find this really funny and really endearing and hilarious, but the first 15 minutes, I was watching it going, oh my God, this is like sitcom level writing. I mean, there's Pete Davidson shows up for 5 minutes, and I'm like, boy, did they do my guy dirty. I mean, he's given some terrible lines, some terrible scenes, some terribly written moments. It was probably about a full 30 minutes into this 2+ hour film where I finally laughed at a written joke. Now, there's good sight gags. I'll give it that. James Gunn is really good at putting stuff in the background, or introducing characters, having them look a certain way that just makes you laugh. But a lot of the written jokes, man, this thing fell flat. I mean, this thing had a very low batting average, in my opinion. And that was so surprising for a guy who is such a talented writer. And this movie is banking on its humor to really get it across the finish line. And the humor just didn't do much for me. And I have a weird sense of humor. I do. I laugh at a lot of very dark shit. I laugh at a lot of juvenile shit. I thought that this would be one of those movies because people are getting their heads ripped off every 5 seconds. There's a lot of juvenile humor, and yet very few jokes landed for me. A lot of it just didn't work. And if you found it funny, honestly, I'm really happy for you. I'm not even like trying to patronize or be condescending. I'm really glad that people are loving this and finding it hilarious. And I bet there's going to be a lot of people who are going to think that this is like a classic, one of the best summer movies the last couple of years. I do not fall into that camp. I found a lot of it very unfunny. And the other big problem with it is that the movie's way too long. Like, if you're going to make a comedy, a superhero comedy, cut it off at 2 hours, cut it off at 90 minutes. This thing is 2 hours and 12 minutes. It did not have to be that long. And while I liked the third act of this movie, the second act dragged on way too long. There's almost like 2 second acts of this movie, and it really kind of bogs the whole thing down. While the narrative is substantially tighter than it was in the film that preceded it, there's a lot of non sequiturs here. I mean, there's 5-10 minute sequences of this movie that really could have been cut down, and I think you could have had a much tighter, funnier film. It's not void of humor. There are several moments that made me laugh quite hard, but I think considering the amount of attempts that they have at jokes in this movie, a lot of them fell flat. And for a movie that is trying to be a superhero comedy, it made me want to go back and watch Deadpool again. There's a lot of memorable things about it, but there's also a lot of real cringeworthy moments. And I was surprised by how much I didn't love this movie, because I really wanted to. So I'm going to give it a positive review. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. I'm sure most people watching this will enjoy it more than I did, and I recommend going out and seeing it for that reason, because it is a director who's having a lot of fun, and it does feature actors who are having a lot of fun, and there's legitimate effort put into this. Like, that's why I was rooting for it so much. It's like James Gunn clearly cares. This is not some processed, banal, boring Hollywood film that's pumped out, every year. There's effort put into it. I just didn't think it completely worked all the way, so I am going to give it a 6, and they'll hate me for it, but that's fine. It's my opinion. You can follow me on Twitter at Castellani2014. While you're at it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get those watch hours up. Thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Peace and happiness.